Hey everybody, what's going on? Jeremy from the Independence Channel. Welcome to another episode of Real Truth. Let's get right into it. I had a lot of people asking me if I've been following the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. It's been blacked out for those who aren't following it. It's been blacked out on social media. It's been blacked out via the corporate media groups, by which the corporate media groups are creating the narrative that the trial is actually about Jeffrey Epstein, when no, it's about Ghislaine Maxwell and her criminal behavior and her pedophilia and her human sex trafficking. That's what this is about. And so I wanted to give an update on the blackout situation, as well as the bureaucratic corruption and influence in this trial, straight from the White House and straight from the former director of the FBI and James Comey and his daughter, who is currently the prosecuting attorney for Ghislaine Maxwell. And one might think, well, if they're the prosecuting attorney, that means they're not on the same side. Well, what I'm going to show you here with how organic my research is with my fitness and health investment initiative as an exercise physiologist, how all of these things kind of tie in together. And there are no coincidences in this world once you open and expand your mind to the socioeconomic and demographic environment in which we truly live, from the political spectrum to the entertainment industry to the judicial system and the executive branch, the legislative branch, you name it, the medical industry as well, academia, all of these things tie in together. And once you start to understand that, you start to see the world for what exactly it is. It can be a very beautiful place, but it's also filled with a lot of darkness. And so we're going to get into the Ghislaine Maxwell trial here. But just to give you an example about this organic nature here, as an exercise physiologist, I like to use a fitness app and get away from social media groups. And that includes Nudge Coach. And so what I'll do as a kind of a life and fitness and wellness coach is I will do a lot of research on YouTube to find videos, for example, that relate to the content that I'm trying to convey to support, convey to my clients and to support them. And in doing so, I interact a lot with people online if I comment on a video or they comment on one of mine. And sometimes you might go back and forth. And one of the things that I've learned to do over time is to stay within myself and not to throw daggers and not to be abrasive, but find a way to communicate in a way that doesn't lose the person that you're trying to convey information to. And so as I'm on YouTube here, I'll give an example of what I was researching this morning. There's a YouTube channel called Insulin IQ where a group of doctors go on and they will pull up a peer-reviewed article. For example, this one that was posted in JAMA Internal Medicine in September of 2020 called The Effects of Time-Restricted Eating on Weight Loss and Other Metabolic Parameters in Women and Men with Overweight and Obesity. And so they were using time-restrictive dieting or intermittent fasting to test to see if a group that was subjected to that fasting lost weight more effectively than those who weren't and were eating 3 square meals a day. And so they didn't find any significant differences, but I did find discrepancies in the study, especially the way in which it was conducted, okay? The method that was used. It could be improved to yield better results because as an ex-physiologist here, I use intermittent fasting effectively with my clients and myself, and it does work. You have to understand when to do it, how to eat when you're not fasting, and so on and so forth. But in any case, as I'm going on here and putting together this playlist and gathering some information to pass along to my clients, I see people are commenting on a comment that I had left on a Larry Elder Highlights YouTube channel video, okay? And this video was called Still Think O.J. Simpson's Innocent? Think Again. And for those who cover my content, know that I stumbled upon O.J. Simpson trial information that the public is not made aware of. All these years later, even, the corporate media still pushes the narrative that this guy got away with murder, when in reality, if you're one of those people who think that, I highly recommend typing in O.J. evidence. As a matter of fact, what I'll go ahead and do now is type that in. O.J. evidence. And what you'll find is a video that looks just like that with a watch, okay? I'll put my mouse next to it here. And it says O.J. Simpson trial evidence photos, by which you have Dave Emery hosting a group of independent journalists, Donald Freed, Stephen Singular, and David Bosco. And these guys give their evidence as to how OJ did not do it and what the media did to cover up all of the evidence to create the perception that he was guilty, and the tricks that they used through maritime law. Everybody says, well, OJ's getting off the hook because he's rich. Well, you ever wonder why that is? We have what's called common law and maritime law. Ghislaine Maxwell, and this all connects. This is kind of a long segue into the Maxwell trial. Maxwell's father was a large part of the global shipping industry. This is maritime law, okay? And this supersedes common law, or what we would call constitutional authority, okay? Maritime law it surpasses and overpowers common law, okay? And this is why wealthy people with money can get off the hook. And they hire attorneys who collude with one another. The prosecuting attorneys, the judge, and the defending attorneys collude with one another in the court of law. The court of law is not fair. It's maritime law, okay? And you will get screwed every time in the event that you're in this system and you don't have that type of maritime authority. This is just what happens. And so anyway, as I'm debating back and forth online with this person via this video, I go and I pull up links to a Jordan Maxwell International Maritime Admiralty Law radio interview in 2012, which is when this video was posted about 10 years ago. And Jordan Maxwell talks about maritime language, and it's very important that we understand this concept that there is a world out there beyond that which we realize as normal people under common law. Okay, and so as I'm doing that, of course, I'm looking up Mark Furman and Alan Dershowitz, who was an O.J. Simpson attorney at the time, also was Donald Trump's attorney during the Russian collusion and quid pro quo impeachment trial. Okay, he also is the same guy, Alan Dershowitz, who was directly linked to Jeffrey Epstein and did represent Jeffrey Epstein in his pedophile cases. Okay, and so anyway, as you're doing this research and contributing to a conversation with a stranger, you run into these same characters, okay? And that segues right into where we're going here, which is the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So let's get started on the trial. Basically, what we have is a judge by the name of Alison Nathan, and Joe Biden, as of November 17th, 2021, nominated this judge to the appeals court, a circuit court, okay? So after this trial's over, this judge is going to get a raise in the bureaucracy. So the White House wants to recommend this person who's currently covering the Ghislaine Maxwell case, the same person, Ghislaine Maxwell, who's responsible for compromising our politicians, creating leverage, and through blackmail, they get what they want. Okay? This judge is being offered a position of the next echelon up after this trial is over. That is a huge conflict of interest, if you ask me, to actually make it public. And not to mention, Joe Biden is going to nominate a lot of these LGBT community folks to certain positions of prominence, despite them either not being competent at all or whether or not they're corrupt. And so this is a big issue to me, and this is a very subversive way for the White House to influence the judge and the attorneys in this case. Speaking of attorneys, we have one Maureen Comey, who is the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, and she is assigned to be the prosecuting attorney against Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, again, we might say, well, if she's trying to prosecute Ghislaine, how are they on the same team? Understand, if you go back to the O.J. Simpson trial and other trials like this, what you have are a collusion between the judge and the prosecuting and defending attorneys. And they control the narrative. They can leak information to the corporate media, and the corporate media can spin the story any way they want to make the defendant look as guilty as they want or innocent as they want. Remember, OJ was not guilty until proven innocent. Donald Trump was not guilty until proven innocent. So the media, you can basically put charges on somebody, and in the meantime, even though the evidence isn't there, you can make them look guilty no matter what. This is an example of collusion, okay? And this happens all the time. Many people complain about it. It happened in the O.J. Simpson trial, and it absolutely happened during the Russian collusion investigation, during which James Comey lied to Congress on various occasions and continues to this day to lie about the nature of their investigation. That was an FBI investigation against the Donald Trump campaign. They indirectly did it through the FISA courts. If you remember, a lawyer whose name was Kleinsmith, who falsified a FISA warrant document saying that Carter Page was not a CIA asset, when in fact he was, and he was also an American citizen. And so they used that lie to facilitate a FISA court-ordered warrant to spy on Carter Page, who was working in the Trump campaign, and that means you can spy on the Trump campaign. And that did happen. And so what you're having here is a Comey who is a globalist. These are globalists and communists, and they're using identity politics through Marxism to implement their fascist policy. And they're using the media to propagandize this. What they're doing is, there were many women who have made these accusations, and yet they're only going to allow 2 women to testify. That's a big problem. So they're limiting the people that could potentially bring forth evidence that would incriminate this person, Ghislaine Maxwell, and they're essentially controlling the outcome of the trial in this manner. And so that's how a prosecuting attorney can actually influence this trial in favor of the defendant. And bet your behind the prosecuting attorneys are going to collude with the defending attorneys and the judge, and this is how it goes. And this is the problem with maritime law. They being the globalists who use maritime authority that supersedes our Constitution, are going to collude with one another to protect their asset, and that asset is Ghislaine Maxwell. And in the event that they don't, Ghislaine Maxwell will no longer exist. And so that's the nature of the trial right now. The trial is being basically bamboozled. It is a kangaroo court system. These examples that I've given are only a couple examples. If you look at a guy named, I believe it's Wayne Simmons, who is a former CIA asset, and in the event that he turns against the establishment and becomes a whistleblower, they can use his criminality, that of the stuff that he was doing on behalf of the United States government, they can use that against him. And that's what they did. And he noticed that his defense attorneys were colluding with the prosecuting attorneys and the judge. And they worked together to prosecute this guy, even though they really had no evidence against Wayne Simmons. And therefore, this guy spent in between 3 and 4 years in prison. I highly recommend looking it up. Although if you look at Fox News, CNN, and all this stuff, they're going to call this guy corrupt, and they're going to call him a liar, and they've discredited Wayne Simmons, when in reality, they did nothing but destroy his credentials and destroy his credibility, or basically destroy his past and his life. So in any case, that's where we're at with the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. It's being heavily censored, heavily influenced by the White House and by the FBI, and essentially the globalist bureaucratic oligarchs who actually undermine our Constitution and control our politicians. So this is a concerted effort to block Americans from knowing the truth, which is why I like to live in the truth. It helps me be more focused on my life and how I can improve not only myself, but the socioeconomic and demographic environment in which I live. I see the inequities in other people, and I want to help other people. And that's why I do what I do as a coach, as an exercise physiologist, and just as a human being towards myself and other humans. And so with that being said, I hope this information was impactful, and I hope it directs you to take further action in investigating just what exactly is going on out there in our world today. So God bless everybody. Stay hydrated, stay motivated, and God bless.
And a very scholarly approach, again, I add, to demonstrate just how contaminated the evidence was, just how collusive police procedures seem to be in the handling of the collection of the evidence. Please expand on that.
I have something new for you that we barely got into the book. You remember Detective Van Adder took a blood sample of Mr. Simpson's blood. He said to deliver it to the criminalist, and he was much criticized for this.
I believe to protect the chain of evidence.
That's right. In fact, he broke it, obviously, and they paid a terrible price at the trial for this. We now find out that according to the coroner, the same Detective Van Adder went to the coroner on the 15th of June and demanded samples of the victim's blood and took it away. Therefore, we now know that between the 13th and the 16th, Detective Van Adder and perhaps others had under their control samples of all the principal's blood, and none of the evidence that was collected was turned in until the 16th. That means that between the 13th and the 16th, all of the evidence and all samples of all of the principal's blood was outside of the chain of evidence.
And we just learned this fact a few days ago?
Just learned that this summer.
This summer.
And it was in the Los Angeles Times, but did you see it anywhere else?
No.
Is it a headline?
No.
Should it be a headline?
Yes, it should. Now, if all the blood, now we know that initially that blood that was taken as a sample from O.J. Simpson, who agreed to voluntarily go in and cooperate with police,
that's right,
was carried around in a vial,
that's right,
for at least a couple of days.
That's right.
But what you're asserting here, as reported in the Los Angeles Times, is that blood samples of the victims were also carried around by Van Adder.
By Van Adder, and this is according to the coroner. Just as according to the director right under District Attorney Garcetti, I'm giving you high sources today, the coroner and now the district attorney, we've learned that the grand jury that was dismissed before the criminal trial was not going to indict.
Not going to indict
O.J. Simpson.
Mr. Simpson.
Not going to indict. These are wealthy, white, middle-aged people. No black jury here, no black women here for Mr. Tubin de Savage, or Mr. Darden, or Mr. Bugliosi, or any of the others who talked about their candle power of the jury, or the black skin of the jury. Wealthy, white. And that includes, Darrell, all the focus groups and all the mock juries in Phoenix, in Orange County, mixed and mainly white. Men and women, rich and poor, old and young, black and white. No one has ever bound Mr. Simpson over when they were asked to look at this case closely. So this question of race that's being used, this reportage of race, this measuring of justice by race, it requires us, I think, to be very sober now, because this is coming from the universities and from the top of the media. And therefore, it appears that everything has been misunderstood.